On today's episode of the Broadway Shuffle, a Texas Tech sports podcast, we assess the Red Raiders' play in the Big 12 up to this point and look ahead to the home game against Arizona. That and much more next on the Broadway Shuffle. All right. Welcome to the Broadway Shuffle with Zyler and Conrad. I'm Brennan. We hope that all of you have had a good week up to this point, are enjoying the Red Raiders' tough road victory against the Kansas State Wildcats. We want to get into, because we weren't able to, unfortunately, my fault, able to record an episode on Monday due to my poor technological issues. We want to kind of assess what the season has been up to this point in the Big 12 as a whole, and also discuss the Kansas State game a little bit as well. So, Zyler, Conrad, I'm going to ask you one question to start the show. If you had to give the Red Raiders a grade within Big 12 basketball play up to this point, what would that grade be? Conrad, you go first.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you can look at that from a lot of different angles. I'd probably go B for me, just because you've lost both games at home, but at the same time you've won both games or all your three games on the road, and so you're doing something that is pretty impressive on the road. Albeit you played Utah and then a team like Kansas State, both down, but still it doesn't matter. It's hard to win on the road in Big 12 basketball play. But at the same time, you got to get some things done at home. That's where we as Red Raiders expect us to win. And so maybe a B plus just because of what you've done on the road, but definitely no higher than that in my opinion, just because I expect you to do more at home. And that's, I think, where our bread and butter has been over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Z?
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me right before this 5-game stretch, like, what did I expect you to do? I expected you to beat UCF, probably beat Utah, toss up at BYU, toss up against Iowa State, and then beat Kansas State. So, expected 3.5-ish wins, maybe 4-ish wins. So I don't think there's any way you can get an A. I agree with Conrad. I think B, maybe to B plus. You added a Q1 win, you added 2 Q2 wins. Hard to get too upset about that. If Iowa State misses one shot, I think it's firmly an A minus to A, but that's just what happened. I think the thing that's encouraging to me is I was a little skeptical of your team going forward as can you actually compete against Big 12 squads? Now, granted, you played UCF, Utah, BYU, and then Iowa State, which was kind of the cream of the crop. But I think you have a squad that can compete in the Big 12. This isn't going to be somebody where you're getting blown out or something like that. So B plus for me.
Yeah, it's been an interesting start because you're 3-2, which is good for a top half, record in the Big 12 so far. But the UCF game just seems to sting a lot. I know the Iowa State game is so tough to still marinate on because you had the lead with 6 seconds. You were up 13 multiple times in that game, and you just felt like you almost should have won that game. But that is now the second-ranked team in the country where, you kind of expect to not necessarily win that game. The UCF game to me is the only game so far up to this point where I'm like, man, you really needed to have that game. I know it was the first game within the conference, but at the same time, you're thinking you get off to a strong start at home. If you were to lose to Arizona here in a couple days, you would now be 0-3 in conference at home, which just isn't going to cut it throughout the season in the Big 12. And that it just doesn't feel right. Though you're 3-0 on the road, it just was like, oh man, like the fact that we haven't been able to take care of home court at all yet, even though it's only been 2 games, has been disappointing. And because of that, I'm going to give it a B minus. I think this team has been competing well. The Kansas State game got ugly there for a while, but your defense came up when they needed to on the road. Any road win's a good win. But just that UCF game to me kind of docks you a couple points because that's just a game that with the level of talent we have on our roster, I just don't think you should lose. And I know the team would hold them to that same standard as well.
Yeah, the thing with UCF, man, it just kind of depends on what team you get that night. Like, if you get the version that Kansas played where they shoot like 17% from the 2, it's like you can beat them by 50, like Kansas did. Or if you get the version that Arizona State played last night where Keyshawn Hall goes for 40, they're going to be really hard to beat. And so that's a team that's, completely Jekyll and Hyde. You have no idea what you're going to get every night. And they're going to struggle to get in the tournament because their predictive metrics are going to swing a lot because they're going to get blown out in some games, and then they're going to knock off some really good teams, just depending on what version of that squad shows up. But yeah, I think I agree, Brennan. That's the one that when we're at the end of the season and trying to hopefully push for, a single-digit seed, that's the one that I think is really going to haunt you a little bit on, like, man, if you just didn't have that demerit on your resume, you'd be looking at a better seed.
Yeah. And I mean, Big 12 basketball, Conrad, it's stressful. I mean, I know it looked ugly, but it's a road win. It's still, even though Kansas State is under 500 and a struggling team this year, and we'll get into that with all the money they spent on NIL here in a little bit, but it's still a road win in the conference play, which is a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, it's absolutely a big deal. I think I was watching the game last night, and I think all of us see the talent that we have on this team with Toppin, with Darion, with Elijah picking up his play, with Christian Anderson coming on strong as Big 12 play has started and progressed. I mean, you see all these guys, Federico having played good games up to this point, maybe didn't have his best game last night, but you just see the level of talent that's on this roster, and you see us play certain games, and you think, well, if we play like we did maybe against BYU and Utah, and play together, even with some mishaps there with certain players, it doesn't feel like everybody has even had their best game yet. We don't feel like we've played a complete game. Obviously you're never going to play perfect in every single game, but it still feels like there's another gear that we can get to. And now if we can find that gear somehow, hopefully on Saturday against Arizona, you're going to have a lot more things to be happy about as the season goes on. But it is stressful. It's really, really stressful considering how close that game was last night, and that's just Big 12 basketball.
Yeah, Z, I was going to make that point, Conrad. Even though you've had good games from a lot of your star players, they haven't really put it together as a unit yet. I mean, Toppin's had good games, and then Hawkins was struggling, and Chance has been pretty much your most consistent player throughout the season up to this point. But we really haven't seen yet what these guys can do if they all put it together for a stretch of 4 or 5 games. We know it's not realistic to expect that all season, but this team could still be very scary the rest of the way if they all find a way to gel at the right time.
Question for you guys. Through 5 games in Big 12 play, who's your MVP for Texas Tech?
What a good question.
Dude, I mean, I would have to say Chance McMillan, just because of his consistency. And even on the defensive side of the ball, when you're watching some plays, it's like there's a loose ball. You kind of just see Chance there. When you need a big shot in transition, you see Chance hitting it. I feel like though you've had guys, play well, like Hawkins has played very well. He's elevated his play in Big 12 for sure. I think he deserves some consideration. And heck, I mean, Christian Anderson is a true freshman, has played really well. But I think I'd stick with Chance if I had to, just what he means overall to your team on both sides of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, such a crucial. I've loved the way he's gotten offensive rebounds this year. He's gotten so many putbacks at crucial moments, and he's not big. He's 6'3", like 190. Like that's an all effort. Like
that's what I'm saying. It's like just you see the ball in the air or on the floor. I mean, chances around it, and so for him to log that many minutes, play that physical and that hard on the defensive side of the ball, and then be one of the most efficient offensive players in the country. I mean, it's hard to not give that guy the MVP up to this point.
Conrad, who do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say Elijah before Brennan even mentioned his name. I think we were all kind of watching him in the non-conference thinking, we expected better than this. Not that he was a poor player by any stretch, but he wasn't the same level that we've seen in Big 12 play. He's been shooting the 3 extremely well. I'm not sure what the exact percentage is, but he's had some games where he's made 4 or 5 threes for you, which has made a big difference in your victories that you've had. And so I'd have to go Elijah. And plus, as we've talked about on this show a lot since basketball season started, you're going to go as far as your guards take you. And so the fact that Elijah has really stepped up in a unique way throughout Big 12 play, I think is only going to bode well for you going forward as well. Zyler, who would you pick?
Yeah. I mean, I think you all make compelling cases. Elijah's shooting 50% from the 3, just in case you're wondering, and 93% from the free throw line. So, and then the thing you didn't really see from him in the non-con that you were hoping for is the assists, and his assist rate is unbelievable right now. It's at 39%, which is second in the conference. And you just didn't really, you saw flashes of that, but not the consistency that he's had. If you look at his game logs for conference play, these are his assist totals starting with the Utah game. He only had 3 in the UCF game, but he went 10 assists to 1 turnover against Utah, 5 assists, 0 turnovers against BYU, 10 assists, 0 turnovers against Iowa State, and then 9 assists, 3 turnovers against Kansas State. So that's the stuff that's like really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Is he's facilitating and getting your guys in great spots. I think for me, it's still Darian. I think he just does so much for your team defensively that doesn't show up in the box score. Like he has to play kind of that 4 role defensively. He's a little bit. That's not necessarily where you would love him to play. You'd love for him to be on the 3 guard, like a bigger, slower, like small forward, and he's having to guard power forwards pretty consistently. And then his initiation of the offense, what he's doing from an efficiency perspective, he's ranked for, KenPom Player of the Year. He's 10th right now, which is, that'd be the highest finish that you've had from anybody since Jarrett Culver finished number 1 in 2019. So he's playing at a really, really high level, even if it's sometimes it's kind of quiet. It's the assists, it's the rebounds, it's the steals, it's some of those small things that you don't always notice.
That's what I was going to say, Z, it's actually crazy to hear that he's 10th because it feels like he's had somewhat of an inconsistent start to the season.
Yep.
I know he's hit big shots in big moments, and he had the key layup against Kansas State there at the end of the game. And not to discredit anything that D5 is doing at all, but it just feels like it hasn't been as consistent as he would hope for coming into the year. So that's still wild to hear that he is 10th in KenPom rankings.
I think the thing that you've had for him, it's just weird because you've had the inferno games from some players. Like you feel like the BYU game was an inferno game for Hawkins. You felt like Toppin was really good against Iowa State, but Darion's been consistently like the number 2 guy. And he's been the MVP in some of the games, you could argue in the BYU game. But he's just been extremely consistent. And, you don't want to always get caught up in the counting stats. Those are always subject to pace of play and other items like that. But he's got, 11, 19, 18, 15, 16 points in his last 5 games and just doing it at a very efficient level while also chipping in typically 10 plus rebounds. And that's going to get you a lot of recognition.
Yeah. And hopefully that ankle, I know he tweaked it a little bit there, but was able to finish the game, obviously. Hopefully that'll be completely healed. Nervous to see D5 and Toppin both go down the last 2 games with some twisted ankles. Hopefully nothing serious. Toppin, again, wasn't as productive as we would hope he would be on the road there, but hopefully that has nothing to do with an ankle, and he's back in action against Arizona, which let's get to. But before that, you got to make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Broadway Shuffle, and then however you listen, wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, we appreciate a follow as well. And then you can follow all of our social medias in the link tree in the description below. But we would love to see you on YouTube in the comments as well. We try to get to as many as we can, and we'd love to hear from you there. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we hope to hear from you when this episode drops. So, okay. Arizona game. Z, this team has been interesting. A lot of close losses, but they're now 5-0 in conference play. This is not an 11-5. You can just walk on over team. This team seems to be hitting a stride. They've kind of gone more to a small ball lineup. What do we need to know about the Wildcats, and what is your expectation for the game? I will be in attendance on Saturday with you and Clayto as well. So maybe we'll bring some good luck charm and get a victory.
Yeah.
Where's my invite, guys?
Sorry, Conrad. Dude, we totally forgot, man.
Dude, I'm 0-2 on games I've attended, so I'm not sure if I need to make an appearance. Maybe I'm the problem. But it's an interesting team. Clayton the first thing that he would say is, I hate Mark Adams because of KJ Lewis. And that was a guy that you thought you should have had as a Texas Tech fan. But there were some things that happened with the Adams regime, and he didn't end up coming to Tech. It's a good team, man. Really guard driven. Jaden Bradley, Caleb Love, KJ Lewis, all really good players. They've also got Trey Townsend, the hero of March Madness last year. He played for Oakland on that run, and he's now an Arizona Wildcat. So you may recognize him whenever they trot out on the floor. The guy that I really think is good for them is a guy named Henry Vassar. He's a 7-footer, true sophomore that's actually been really, really good for them. They've got some size. They're going to run. They play a really fun brand of basketball. They're going to run. They're going to get out in transition. They're going to shoot it quickly. They love to hit the 3. It's a good team. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I expect it to be played into the 70s. I think you need to hit shots. You need to limit what they get in transition, force them to work in the half court, and then finish possessions. I thought that's what I love McCasland as a coach because I feel like he's excellent at optimizing what his team does well. I feel like he's getting the most out of this roster. I don't feel like I look at this team and like, man, they're just really misused or think. I don't ever think that. They play hard, but what I thought you did really well is your defensive possessions have been better. It's just, can you finish the last 5 seconds? Can you secure the rebound? Can you prevent the backdoor layup? Can you do all of those other things? You're going to need to be excellent against Arizona. Tommy Lloyd's a great coach. They're going to have a good game plan, and yeah, they're 5-0. They're looking to contend for a Big 12 title, and both of you need resume stacking wins, and this would be a good one for both of you. So big game, and it would be your biggest win on the season if you can pull it off.
So they're a Q1 team, Z, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you look at them, on the bracketology side, in the net, they're 13th. So that would be a Q1 win unless they somehow dropped out of the top 30.
Which it's not looking like. I mean, and even their games, I mean, they lost to Duke, they lost to West Virginia in overtime, they lost to Wisconsin, who is a ranked team out of the Big Ten. It's not like this team is, a Kansas State type or anyone that's kind of just in the middle, like a Cincinnati that's kind of fallen off. This is a very good basketball team coming to Lubbock. Conrad, surely
they handled Baylor too,
and they handled.
They
Baylor.
really handled. They really handled Baylor.
Yeah.
They made Baylor look like a JV team.
Yep. Yeah. There you go. Hey, surely we're not starting 0-3 at home in the conference play, correct?
That's what I wanted to bring up. I just don't. I know Arizona's a great team. Grant and Tommy Lloyd are obviously very familiar with each other, having coached on the Olympic team together this summer as assistant. Or Grant was assistant. Was Tommy Lloyd the head coach?
I don't remember. I think Tommy was the head coach.
I think Tommy was the head coach. Grant was on that staff, though. So these guys obviously know each other. From that perspective, students are back. Classes are back in session. The environment's looked good the last couple of weeks, but I expect this one to be great. You've got a team that has talent. I just don't see us starting 0-3 at home in conference play. That's like 85% of my reason for picking Tech to win in this game. It will be a high-scoring game just because they do run. We do play excellent offense here at Texas Tech, and so I don't see us necessarily. But again, it could go either way, right? I mean, we thought we had the one last Saturday at home against Iowa State, and then you lose, and you think you're maybe going to lose last night against Kansas State, and you would have never predicted that, but you win. It's Big 12 basketball, so I'm not going to pick us to lose just because I can't bear myself to think you could start 0-3 at home and then 3-0 on the road. Wouldn't that be just absolutely backwards the way we would have predicted it before the season started?
Yep.
Yeah. I think I was Conrad. We were talking on the phone earlier, and I was like, Big 12, your Big 12 home court advantage was so strong. And during your peak eras from 18 to 21, 22, I mean, even before, 17, 16, when we were at school, I felt like the home crowd had really picked up. If you go 0-3 in conference play to start at home, you could pretty much throw out any home court advantage that you have either earned or have. I just, that just doesn't feel like it's something that has happened very often outside of that 1 year you were really bad under Mark Adams. You've typically dominated the home court in Lubbock. So yeah, that just sounds wrong. I hope that does not happen, Z.
Yep. I think you're due. It feels like Tech will have 2 of these games every year where you show up and you just absolutely blitz a team. I'm thinking of Kansas last year. Even thinking of Kansas in 2019, the whiteout game where sometimes you show up and you just have your A+ game and there's not a thing your opponent can do. I hope that's what we get against Arizona. It'd be a signature win. It'd be your best win of the season. You need Darion and Toppin to be healthy. You're not going to be able to do it if those guys are 60%, 70%. You're going to need to be firing on all cylinders. So exciting game. It should be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to be aesthetically pleasing. So really looking forward to that one and hope we can pull out a win.
Gosh, dude, that 2019 Kansas game was absolutely epic. That was pure cinema. Did you camp outside? I camped. Were y'all camping?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
No.
Dude, I had great seats for that game, man. That was well worth it. The fact that you had like the Kansas game that year, the Kentucky at home, you had Trey Young, I think it might have been the year before.
Trey Young was
Trey
Young
17
was in
or 18?
16. I think Trey Young was in 16.
I thought Buddy Hield was 16. I thought the Buddy Hield OU game was 16 because they went to the Final Four that year. That's the year they went to the Final Four.
Maybe you're right. So was Trey Young 17?
Maybe he was 17 or 18. Either way, dude, you just had a stretch of like 4 where you had just had prime time basketball games in Lubbock.
Oh, yeah.
College game day. I mean, that, and maybe we're privileged for being at school during that era. I hope it finds a way to come back because, man, I mean, it was such a hard place to play. And when the USA is rocking, there's no other better arena in the conference, in my opinion. So we'll see.
There's no better arena in the country when it's rocking.
Dude, I mean,
Trey Young was
I'll die
18.
on that hill.
Okay, so Trae
Trae
Young
Young
was
was 28.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I was
18.
correct.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
So
Yep, nice.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
you had like
and
3 straight years of just primetime basketball games at home, man. It was a ton of fun.
Yep.
Well, and thinking about the USA as well, I mean, part of what makes Texas Tech so unique in not only football but basketball is the home field, home court advantage. I mean, you've got the best fans in the country. They show up, they're loud, they're crazy, they're engaged in the game. They're not just passively watching. They're engaging. They're making an impact on the whatever's happening on the court or on the field. So that's something that I really hope we see on Saturday, because there were a couple of years there that Brennan just mentioned that it wasn't even a question what you were going to get when Texas Tech basketball walked out on the floor. You were going to get the craziest environment in college basketball. But now, obviously, it's a little bit different era. But I still think you can have that same type of environment again on Saturday against Arizona.
And
Yep.
credit to the students that were there for the Chris Beard return game too. That was probably one of the most electric environments in
Yeah.
Big 12 basketball history, maybe. And we'll be bringing that back on Saturday. I'm going to bring back the 2019 good luck charm to the USA, man. Clayton and I will be there cheering them on. So, Conrad, sorry, man. I guess I just lost your ticket somewhere in the ether. I don't know where it went. It was on my Texas Tech app. And
Yeah.
Now it's not. So sorry, man.
That's okay. I'll be watching it on Saturday afternoon from the comfort of my couch before I watch the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes get their 16th playoff win in his era.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think he's 15-3.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see what happens, man. All right. Well, let's close the show with a quick discussion, Z, on something that you wanted to hit on. NIL in college basketball. There were quite a few teams that spent big money this offseason that are not finding success, Kansas State being one of them. Why don't you go into a little bit here and let our viewers and fans know that maybe NIL spending in college basketball isn't always the way to go?
Yeah, if you follow the portal season this past spring, you know that the biggest spenders this past year were Kansas State, Arkansas, and Indiana. Those teams are all firmly out of the dance. JBR Bracketology has Kansas State already eliminated from at-large contention. Indiana still has a pathway forward, and Arkansas obviously does in the SEC. But I think Arkansas is now 0-4 in SEC play. Like you got to get to 500 or at least something kind of close to that, and that pathway is getting a lot tougher. They're projected to go 6-12. That's not going to get you in the tourney. I hate to say it. They've lost 4 in a row. When I look at resource allocation in college basketball, I think talent is really important, but I think your true edge is in coaching. And if you are a program with a lot of money, you should be investing in top level head coaches and assistants in order to elevate your program. Now, you still need talent. You can't, be running around with, a JV team, but it's still got to be, it has to be well coached. You look at what Mike Woodson, John Calipari, and Jerome Tang are doing right now. They're just not coaching at a super high level, and they have talent on the roster. That's why when I look at building programs going forward, Grant McCaslin won't always be the coach at Texas Tech. Our next coach, and when we look at items like that, it has to be find a coach that it can elevate your team analytically, that has done less with more or more with less, and that knows how to build a program and knows how to win. I think that's just something that's really shocked me this year, is that money doesn't always buy you championships in basketball like it can in football. The talent acquisition edge that you can build in football is just so robust. Like you have 85 guys where you can stockpile depth and talent and things like that. Basketball, if you miss on a couple of evaluations, that tanks your team. You've got to be excellent all the time. And I think that's why building an excellent coaching staff is the most important thing you can do in college basketball, not building an excellent war chest.
It's funny because Calipari's been buying guys since he started coaching basketball. They were just freshmen. You would think that he'd be used to buying talent now that it's legal, but I guess he's struggling with the transfer portal era, which is a little surprising. Conrad, what were you going to say?
Well, I just wanted to touch on quickly that, Zyler said that Grant McCaslin won't always be the head coach at Texas Tech. And from my sources that I have, which are in my dreams, I hear there's a lifetime contract being negotiated right now with Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech. So I don't know if that's true, Zyler. I think we may have Coach McCaslin around for a very, very long time.
I'm sure they said the same thing about Chris Beard.
Yeah. You never know.
What I love about Conrad, Z, and Conrad, what I love about you, man, is you're such a true homer, man. Like you want everything to stay connected. You want the love. You want Barron to be the starting quarterback. You want Mahomes to always be near and dear to winning title. You want Joey to die in his grave in the south end zone, man, as he, walks off with his 19th championship. I appreciate how much you just want the collective to always stay together and the fam to run in unity till the end. No heartbreak, no one leaving the family. You're bought in. It's motivating. I wish I could get to your level. I just can't.
Well, one day you may reach my level, but I also heard, speaking of Joey in the South End Zone, I heard that when they built the South End Zone, he actually bought a grave plot that's in there. There's only one of them, and it's for Joey McGuire, because that's where he's going to be forever, because that is his forever home, is the South End Zone at Texas Tech.
God, dude, can you imagine? I heard that the masked rider that they built in the stadium, its butt is pointed toward Waco, similar to our little statue that points toward College Station.
My butt's pointed towards Waco right now.
do we know for sure that statue because my dad, who graduated from Tech in the 70s, he didn't know about that then. When did that become a thing? Like, when did someone say, do you know this horse's butt is pointed towards College Station? Because
I don't know.
Maybe he was just ignorant.
That is true. I remember that.
That
was on my tour. That was on my.
I know it's true, but
I
don't know the history of it. I want to know when someone said, like, was it when they built the statue? Like, let's point it.
They just thought
that way.
Did they build the statue for that purpose?
Yeah, it's let's point it. Let's poop on College Station. Like, let's.
We're writing history here on the Broadway Shuffle, and so if we say that's what happened, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, when people go back into the archives and they're unearthing the Texas Tech footage from the mid 2020s, they'll be looking at the Broadway Shuffle trying to figure out what was going on. What were those people doing?
I just gave you a trivia question for our next episode. You can find that out, and then you can let us know, because I have no idea. And so before we close the show, Z, do you have a trivia question for us tonight? I think one time I jumped the gun on it and you didn't have one. So now I've got to ask, because we do not. Believe it or not, we don't prepare as deeply as you might think we do for this show. Sometimes we like to riff. Do you have a question for us tonight?
I do actually have a question for you. It was something when I was looking at our team depth chart and looking at the stats for conference play, I was kind of wanting to look and see where are some of our guys leading in statistical categories? Is there anything that's kind of shocking me? Anything that was necessarily surprising me? What was I noticing when I went through our team stats? Was there anything that I thought, that's kind of surprising? And so rebounds, that's something that's really important. That's something that you got to be able to do well if you want to win games. Do you know who leads Texas Tech in rebounding in conference play?
In conference play, you might have given this away earlier? I don't know, but is it Darion Williams?
I will allow you to have that guess, Conrad.
The only other person, at least in my limited knowledge, that I would think might be up there would be Toppin, just because he's had some big games rebounding the ball.
It is actually Darion Williams. He is your leading rebounder for the season. He gets it done on the minutes.
That's what I was going to guess, but Brennan
certainly Z wasn't going to give D5 the MVP without him filling up the stat sheet, man. I feel like important. That was it is important. And Toppin had some struggling games. Like, he had 2 rebounds, I think, against BYU, or maybe did he have a 0 rebound game?
Because he's been injured. He's missed and he's gotten hurt. Like, there's different things like that. I think he would lead your rebounding if he was playing full time, but Darion's just logged so many minutes.
D5. Well, great question, Z, and thank you guys for checking out this episode. We will be back on Monday with a special guest interview, so look forward to that. We will be dropping that episode Monday morning, and then looking over the Arizona game as well. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you feel so, like this video, subscribe to our channel. We love to hear from you in the comment sections. Let us know who you are, and then follow along on Spotify and Apple as well. So for Conrad and Zyler, I'm Brennan. Everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you guys next time on the Broadway Shuffle.